closely at the white crystals in your kitchen. Today, sugar is cheap, ordinary, and violently addictive. But for thousands of years, it was a holy secret, a luxury for emperors, and a dark catalyst for human suffering. Long before it flooded the global market, sugar was born in blood and myth. Our story begins 10,000 years ago in the dense, prehistoric jungles of New Guinea. Here, indigenous tribes discovered a giant, wild grass. When chewed, it bled a thick, sickly, sweet juice. To these ancient people, this grass was not food, it was divine. Their legends claim the first human beings were born from the stalks of this sacred plant. For centuries, the secret remained hidden in the Pacific. But slowly, ancient seafaring merchants carried the grass across the turbulent Indian Ocean. By 500 BC, masters in India achieved the impossible. They boiled the raw juice, cooling it into rough, golden crystals they called khanda. In the ancient Sanskrit texts, this was no ordinary treat. It was an elite medicine, a mystical antidote against dark poisons, and a luxury reserved strictly for high priests and holy men. By the 6th century, the insatiable Persian Empire marched east and uncovered the secret. Emperor Chosroes I was so mesmerized by this reed that gives honey without bees that he locked the crystal dust deep inside the royal treasury, guarding it alongside crown jewels and heaps of gold. To the Persians, sugar was power. But empires rise and fall. In the 7th century, Arab armies swept through Persia, unlocking the royal vaults. They saw the true value of the white gold and engineered massive irrigation systems to grow it across the Mediterranean. But sugar is a cruel master. It demands endless water and backbreaking, relentless toil. In the sweltering fields of Egypt and North Africa, the first massive sugar plantations emerged, setting a grim blueprint for the centuries of horror that lay ahead. For centuries, Europe could only dream of sugar, a luxury so rare it was sold by the ounce. But in 1493, a fateful voyage would change the fate of the world forever. Christopher Columbus loaded his ships with a seemingly harmless cargo, stalks of sugarcane. He planted them in the fertile, sun-drenched soils of the Caribbean. The climate was perfect. The cane grew rapidly, thick and bursting with sweetness. European empires quickly realized they had struck a gold mine far more lucrative than actual gold. They called it white gold. But this white gold required an ocean of human blood. Indigenous populations were enslaved first, forced into the fields until entire civilizations collapsed from disease and exhaustion. Desperate for labor to fuel their growing obsession, Europeans turned their eyes toward Africa. This sparked the Transatlantic slave trade, the largest forced migration in human history. Millions of African men, women, and children were hunted down, chained, and packed into the suffocating bellies of slave ships. The journey across the Atlantic, known as the Middle Passage, was a waking nightmare of disease and death. Those who survived the terrifying voyage were dragged onto the beaches of Jamaica, Barbados, and Brazil. Their destination was the sugar plantation, an inescapable machine of absolute human cruelty. Life expectancy for an enslaved worker on a sugar plantation was shockingly short, often less than 7 years. Laborers worked 18 hours a day under a blistering sun, hacking down dense cane with heavy machetes. Overseers stood behind them, enforcing brutal quotas with leather whips that tore flesh from bone. The danger didn't stop in the fields. The boiling houses were literal hellscapes on earth. Workers stirred massive, bubbling cauldrons of boiling sugar syrup in oppressive, suffocating heat. If an exhausted worker fell asleep or slipped, their limbs were frequently caught in the crushing iron rollers of the mill. Plantation managers kept axes next to the machinery, ready to instantly amputate a trapped arm before it stopped the production line. The insatiable European sweet tooth was feeding on human lives at an industrial scale. For every ton of sugar exported to London or Paris, a human life was violently extinguished. The Atlantic Ocean became a vast cemetery for those who resisted or succumbed to the torture. By the 18th century, sugar had transformed from a holy medicine into the most blood-stained commodity on earth. As the 18th century dawned, sugar transitioned from a rare medicine into an unstoppable global addiction. In London and Paris, fashionable coffee houses and tea salons exploded in popularity. Bitter tea from China and dark coffee from Arabia were virtually undrinkable to European palates without massive heaps of Caribbean sugar. A new social ritual was born, sweetened hot beverages served in delicate porcelain cups. Demand surged exponentially, turning sugar plantation owners into the wealthiest individuals on the planet, the sugar barons. These men wielded terrifying political power, bribing parliaments and buying votes to protect their bloody trade. In the halls of Westminster, the West India lobby dictated British foreign policy, sparking naval wars just to secure sugar islands. Staggering wealth was poured into lavish English country estates, built directly on the backs of enslaved laborers. But this extreme consumption brought grotesque physical consequences to European high society. Dental hygiene was non-existent, and constant sugar consumption rotted the teeth of royalty and aristocrats alike. A mouth of blackened, decaying teeth became a bizarre badge of honor, proof that you were wealthy enough to afford sugar. Commoners who couldn't afford sugar even painted their teeth with soot to mimic the rot of the upper class. Yet as industrial manufacturing improved, sugar production surged, driving global prices down. What was once liquid gold for kings slowly became an everyday staple for the working class. Factory workers fueled long, exhausting shifts on cheap white bread and heavily sweetened tea. Sugar had successfully infiltrated every single corner of human society. But the horrific human cost could no longer stay hidden in the dark. Stories of brutal plantation floggings and human misery began reaching European shores. In the late 1700s, a quiet revolution sparked in Britain, the first mass consumer boycott in history. Over 300,000 citizens refused to buy West Indian sugar, declaring it tainted by human blood. Women spearheaded the movement, serving unsweetened tea in homes and circulating pamphlets detailing plantation atrocities. Abolitionist Thomas Clarkson famously demonstrated the brutal iron collars and thumb screws used on sugar slaves. The public was outraged to realize their sweet treats were directly tied to unspeakable horrors. The sugar boycott proved that consumer choices could shake the foundations of massive, corrupt empires. But while the fight against slavery gained momentum, the global appetite for cheap sugar was an unstoppable titan that would soon take a new, insidious form. With the collapse of Atlantic slavery, empires turned to industrial chemistry to satisfy their sweet obsession. In the mid-20th century, scientists unlocked a new method to mass-produce cheap sweetness from corn. High-fructose corn syrup was born, cheaper, sweeter, and far more insidious than cane sugar. Industrial food conglomerates realized that adding sugar to processed food made products mathematically irresistible. In the 1960s, the sugar industry secretly paid scientists to manipulate nutritional research. They successfully demonized dietary fat while quietly hiding the catastrophic health risks of sugar. Processed foods flooded supermarket shelves, secretly laced with hidden sugars engineered to hit the brain's bliss point. Sugar was rebranded under 60 different names to mask its presence on ingredient labels. Neuroscientists discovered that sugar triggers the exact same dopamine pathways in the brain as cocaine and nicotine. The human body, evolved for scarcity, was suddenly bombarded with unnatural quantities of refined sweetness. An unprecedented global health crisis erupted. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, and fatty liver disease skyrocketed. The liver, overwhelmed by excess fructose, converted the surplus directly into toxic visceral fat. Ultra-processed foods were aggressively marketed to children using bright colors and catchy mascots. Massive soda corporations poured billions into political lobbying, blocking health warnings and sugar taxes. Fast food empires expanded across every continent, colonizing global diets with cheap, sugar-laden calories. Today, the average human consumes more sugar in a single week than our ancestors ate in their entire lives. What began 10,000 years ago as a sacred grass in the jungles of New Guinea has evolved into an invisible, multi-billion-dollar trap controlling human biology. Empires were built on it, millions were enslaved for it, and billions today remain addicted to it. The chains may have changed, but the master remains the exact same. Every sweet bite carries 10 centuries of blood, greed, and corporate manipulation. We no longer search for sugar. Sugar searches for us in every bite we take. It is the ultimate Trojan horse of human history, wrapped in sweetness, hiding an ocean of dark truths. So the next time you stir those white crystals into your morning cup, ask yourself, are you enjoying a simple treat or worshiping a master that conquered the world?